Wild places and woodlands as a source of medicine cannot be underestimated. Just as we've got a supermarket full of food here in the woods, we also have a pharmacy of medicine, and it's all free. Learning to identify and then hunt down edible plants is a great way to get to know your local woodland. While we're here to gather plants for our health, it's important that we avoid harm. So there are a few little rules for our own health and safety that we need to follow when we're foraging. First of all, please don't go picking plants and putting them into your system unless you know 100% what kind of plant it is, or you're with someone who really knows their stuff. So while I'm standing here next to some very beneficial plants, some of them can make life a bit unpleasant, such as the stinging nettle. We will gather that and use it for health benefits, but it can really sting you if you touch it. Similarly, we've got a dead gorse plant here. It's very jaggy and spiny, and if those spines get into your skin, they can be quite unpleasant to pull out. They're like nasty splinters. Your plant ID needs to be good. You wouldn't want to ingest this foxglove in front of me, to mistake it for another plant, to eat it, or to ingest the juice. It can cause you to die because it will stop your heart. Wild herbal medicine can be incredibly simple. You don't even have to take the plant home or do anything to it in order to gain the best of its benefits. A case in point is wild aromatherapy. With this hawthorn tree here, we can demonstrate, because it's May and the hawthorn blossom is fully open. It's also called May blossom. Just to walk past a hawthorn tree in May is enough to give you a hint that it's a great aromatherapy plant. And all you have to do is take a good whiff of the blossoms. Inhaling that a few times brings wonderful feelings of peace and calm and bliss. Well, it does for me anyway. And hawthorn is traditionally used in herbal medicine to treat the heart, sometimes physically with heart arrhythms, or to reduce hypertension, and also to treat emotional conditions such as depression and melancholy. It's a great calmative and mood lifter, and all it takes is to put your nose in those blossoms and inhale deeply and gently a few times over. Legend has it that Merlin the magician was seduced into giving up his earthly powers and going into the underworld by the maiden Nimue, enchanted by her songs, under the blossoms of a huge hawthorn tree on a warm May summer evening. And I don't blame him. In May, not only do the blossoms open and all the flowers emerge, but so do the insects who come and feed off the flowers, or off the insects that feed off the flowers. You may be able to see buzzing around me the mayflies, who live a short but beautiful life, and they're quite pleasant and harmless. However, this time of year heralds the arrival of the dreaded midge, the scourge of outdoor lovers in Scotland. And this damp weather, which has been followed by warm weather, they're already starting to come out. What do we do? What natural medicine can we find in the wild? Well, there is one. I've got to find me an alder tree, and I've got to find it now. But here we have a lovely golden flower in this native woodland comfrey. Comfrey can occasionally be confused with horrible, smelly, poisonous plants such as stinking hedge woundwort, or indeed with foxglove. However, when we see these golden bell-shaped flowers, we know we're safe. We have these lovely, hairy, fleshy leaves, and it's quite a rampant plant, so we can pick a fair bit of it. It's a great cell regenerator, a fast healer, and it has a very ancient tradition, and was said to be able to do remarkable things. Now, in the old days, comfrey was known as knit bone. It was said to be able to knit bone and other tissues back together. And we have remnants of a couple of old spells from early Ireland and ancient Germany that suggest this spell was used with comfrey to knit bones back together. So, back in the early Middle Ages, if I'd broken my finger or sprained it in some way, I'd put the comfrey on, and I'd be saying something like a story of the old gods and how, say, their horse sprained its fetlock or whatever, and I'd be saying we put blood to blood, bone to bone, flesh to flesh, sinew to sinew, etc. The comfrey would be wrapped around the injured limb or digit. It would be changed, perhaps even several times a day, but people have sworn that even that can regenerate the cells of dead tissues very quickly. Closer to the surface of the skin, it can be used to heal cuts and grazes, although it's suggested that you shouldn't put comfrey healing ointment on deeper wounds because the skin cells will regenerate quickly and you may trap infection underneath. Here's a tree commonly found in woodlands, wetlands and even parks all over Britain. This is the willow tree. Now there are 36 different subspecies of willow in Britain. It can be tricky to identify them all, and to be honest with you, I'm no expert, but this looks like it could be a hybrid between the grey and white willow. It is a very important medicinal plant because its bark contains salicylic acid, and this has been used to synthesize painkiller drugs such as aspirin. Now, long before scientists began researching properties of this plant in laboratories, like many others, ordinary folk knew about its properties and didn't hesitate to use it. So, again, with wild herbal medicine, it's as easy as cutting yourself a bit of bark. So I've picked a mature, healthy tree with nice smooth bark, a tree which can sustain the small wound I'm about to give it. As you just peel the bark fairly shallow off the edge of the branch, try doing it from the bottom of the side rather than the top so it's not fully exposed to the elements. You can see a bit of lignin and a lot of nice green cambium and sap. And this is what we're going to use as a fantastic emergency first aid painkiller. So let's see if it actually works. Okay, it's not the tastiest thing in the world. If I keep chewing like this, and to do this you just chew it on one side of your mouth to test it. We take it out, excuse me. Oh yeah, half of my tongue is already numb, along with one half of my mouth. If I was to do that for 5 minutes, I couldn't feel it at all. It'd be just like coming out of the dentist, you know, after a bit of dental surgery. And not surprisingly, willow bark was chewed for toothache back in the day. You could also take the chewed bark and apply it as a poultice to a sore part of the skin, and the pain-killing effects of it are pretty dramatic. Back to the wet places now, and here we have a wonderful medicinal plant, Meadow Sweets. Meadow Sweet loves wet places, marshes, especially the banks of streams and rivers like this one. It has remarkable properties. It contains salicylic acid, which is synthesized to make various painkillers in the pharmaceutical industry. Meadow sweet has a very distinctive smell. Very strong when you crush up the leaves, or when you waft the creamy pink umbelliferous flowers which appear between July and September. But crushing up the leaves is in itself a form of healing, because the smell here is so strong that even to get a good whiff of the aroma, the chemical compound of meadow sweet, sniffing it can cure headaches and reduce anxiety. This plant has been known since ancient times in this country to cure fever, to cure headaches and other pains, and to settle anxiety. There's a story about meadow sweet from the ancient Gaelic legends, and the hero Cuchulainn, the legendary warrior of Ulster in the north of Ireland. He used to get into battle rages, these kind of tantrums which made his body warp and grow huge, and smoke would come out of his ears, his eyes would bulge out, and he'd be killing 20 enemies at a blow. Ancient Celtic version of the Incredible Hulk, really. Don't make him angry. Anyway, one day he got angry and he killed all the warriors in the opposing army, and I guess the rest just ran away. Anyway, he was coming back to his castle, and he was in such a rage that the king and all the people in the castle thought he'd destroy them if he came to the castle still in his battle rage. So they pushed him into a vat of water, but the vat exploded. He was so hot with his battle anger. They pushed him into another vat, and unfortunately all the water just evaporated into steam. I guess Cuchulainn was still too hot. One of the old wise men, a druid, said, "We've only got one vat left, and we need to throw as much of this meadow sweet in as we can." And that's what they did. And when Cuchulainn fell into the vat full of infused meadow sweet, he calmed down. And for that reason, in the Gaelic language, meadow sweet is called Chris Cuchulainn, Cuchulainn's belt, because it was the only thing that could contain the battle-raging warrior Cuchulainn. Well, I reckon it's about time for a cup of tea. But a cup of tea in the woods means boiling water, and that means finding your own wood and preparing it. If you've got the right gear, none of this is a problem. A hand axe will cut wood to whatever size you need, and a saw will take care of the bigger bits. Today's wild herbal tea is mint, which loves riverbanks and often grows there in abundance. And it smells wonderful. Lighting fires seems to be a favourite outdoor activity for a lot of people. So, people usually bring along a lighter or some matches, which is all very well until they get soaked. Why not go primitive? Bring some fire steels along. They'll make sparks. If they get wet, all you do is wipe them down with a dry cloth and start again. The sparks need to fall onto lightweight, very dry, brittle organic material like thistledown, dry grass, dry tree bark, or even cotton wool or sheep's wool. So-called primitive fire lighting is a rare art form nowadays, but it's catching on. It's not that hard once you get the hang of it, and it can certainly get a fire going quickly and impress your friends. A storm kettle, also known as a Kelly kettle, is a very efficient instrument for boiling water quickly and using a minimum amount of wood. It has a small chamber on the bottom for you to put a small fire in, and the wood is then fed into the top. When you've foraged those wild herbs, when you've cut the wood, when you've lit the fire, when you've boiled the water and poured it over those leaves and caught that first waft of fragrance on the steam and sat yourself down with a beautiful view, your cup of tea is going to be the most delicious and satisfying thing in the whole world.